It's really common for me to get new crafters here on my channel, and so I wanted to take some time to make a little video about what my honest advice to a person who is interested in card making or a new card maker would be. Hi, I'm Jess from JessCrafts.com, and I'm here to help you make the most of your crafty supplies and time. So let's talk about what I want a new card maker to know. The first thing I want to emphasize is that you need very little in terms of supplies, because I think that can be intimidating to someone trying a new craft to think, oh, I need to buy all the things. You absolutely do not. There's not very many things. You get a piece of paper and a pen and you can make a card. And there are a lot of channels here on YouTube that are dedicated to showing you how to make cards with very little, how to craft with very little. And in general, I think that my channel supports that. I think that's why people find me very often is when there's new is because I'm not using a ton of supplies. I'm using like colored cardstock and patterned paper and tape and maybe some pre-printed embellishments and sometimes a little bit more. But in terms of like what you really need to get started, it's not much. I do have a little video on my channel about some things I would recommend. Like if I had to start over, what would I buy first? But I would recommend looking at thrift stores, especially arts and crafts thrift stores. And I do have a list of US and Canadian arts and crafts thrift stores on my blog. There will be a link in the video description. There'll be like a whole section of little helpful tools for those who want to know more. You can go to a regular thrift shop. You can go Facebook Marketplace. You can ask a friend like, hey, have you, tried that in the past? Because there's a lot of people who have held on to their craft supplies, hoping they'll use them again, and they might be happy to pass them along or let you borrow them to see if you like it. But also, libraries, maker spaces, community maker spaces, and sometimes that is at those arts and crafts thrift stores. A lot of them do have maker spaces. So maybe you can go to the public library and use their Cricut machine and cut out a couple of things and make some cards and see if you're into it before you go ahead and make some of these larger investments. I will also link my paper busting templates because, as I mentioned, they don't require a lot of supplies and they themselves are free. So you might enjoy just kind of like that as an easy way, like, do I like this or not? Because, if you find a pack of pattern paper at the thrift store and some colored cardstock, you can get started for sure. So the next thing that I would recommend is to try only one thing at a time. I think that this is kind of feeds into that idea of you need very little, because I think that you could see all the different things that are out there, all the different colors of even one supply. So you might see someone do embossing and there's so many colors of embossing powder. How do you know which ones to buy? Or you see them do a cool alcohol ink technique or distress inking and you think, oh, I need them all. But not only would I suggest, don't just buy them all at one time, but also try only one new thing at a time. See if it's for you. Do you like doing it? And what I thought of is when I first started crafting, I've been crafting for almost 20 years, and I guess this is like a couple years into it, but I found out about distress inks. And the way that I saw them done was like to make scenes. So people were using like blue ink to blend into a sky and green ink to make grass. And we were like making like scene cards, and there wasn't a lot of specialty stencils at the time, so maybe we were cutting our own stencils, just taking a piece of cardstock and creating a stencil with like grass, or if we're at the time though, like that's what I did with my distress inks. And then I was like, oh, these are really fun, and so I started buying more, but then kind of realizing that like I didn't necessarily have a plan for all these colors. Did I need more than one color of green? Did I need a purple? Okay, well, I can make a night sky with purple. I can combine like purple and dark blue and black and make this really cool night sky scene, and that would be fun. But I felt like I was in that point more coming up with an idea after I bought supplies rather than knowing what I wanted to do with them before and knowing if I even liked that look. So I think if you take the time, you buy 2 or 3 inks, try it out, see if it's something that you like. 2 or 3 embossing powders, maybe not even that many, but buy like the bare minimum to give something a try, or like I said, borrow it, thrift it, etc. Then you might get a better idea of what you actually like and what your style of card making is, because I think a lot of us bought stuff at the beginning, realize that we don't love it as much anymore. So try one technique at a time. Then my next tip, I suppose, could be seen as more of like a negative thing, but I said, honest advice. I want to be like clear with you guys. Is that card making will probably, I almost want to say definitely not save you money. So I think some people get into card making, and I think absolutely, if you were just taking, like, if you bought a pack of cardstock, you folded it in half, you drew something on the front, you wrote a note inside, like, that's probably cheaper than buying cards. But it's kind of hard for me because, one, not as many people expect cards anymore. So I think that if you were really concerned about saving money, you could just buy less cards and just, write like a letter on a nice piece of paper, or buy stationery or something. I don't know, like, just skip the card. But people think, oh, cards are kind of expensive now, might be $6 or $7 for a card, but that's a pretty fancy card. And so if you bought all the supplies to recreate those looks, you might be spending $100 on card making supplies. And if that's what you want to do, please, like, this is not me saying, like, nobody should spend money on card making. Don't, like, obviously I spent my fair share of money on card making. It's my hobby and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you think that you're getting into it to save money, that's what I want to address specifically. I don't think you can buy the supplies to make comparable cards and save money, probably. You can let me know. Like, let me know in the video description, for any of you that just chose to watch this video because you're kind of curious what my advice was. Like, what advice would you give a new card maker? Has any of these things rang true for you so far? Do you agree with my advice? But turning back to a more positive note, I think that card making can be a great creative outlet because you can go and do as much technique and fancy stuff and get really, really creative as you want, or you can keep it more simple. Like I mentioned, grab those paper busting templates. It's like cut here, glue here. Like, it's it gives you directions. You can follow tutorials really closely and have a great time. Or you can kind of go off book and try new things, and that's great too. And I think that that's important because some hobbies, they feel like you really have to get really technical before you can get good at them. I don't think that's as true with card making. I think card making is really beginner friendly. On a same note, I think that card making can be really positive, not because only is it a creative outlet and self-care, like taking time for yourself, but you can use it to positively impact others really easily. So I have a list, and this will be in that little like link section where you can donate your cards. So if you like to make handmade cards, it feels really fun and positive for you, but you don't have a lot of people to give them to, there's organizations you can donate to. There's places where you can sign up to send cards to a specific person, but also you can make an old friend a pen pal, send them cards on the regular, send them to maybe your grandkids, like I said, old friend, anyone who just thinks that, would be inspired by that positivity, let them know you're thinking about them. And it's really inexpensive to do that because it's maybe the cost of a stamp. Maybe you can hand it to them in person and you don't even cost you anything extra. Whereas some hobbies, it is really hard to give up your creation to someone else because you've probably spent a lot more time on it and maybe a lot more money in terms of materials than you did on a single card. So yeah, maybe I spent $15 on a stamp set, but I can use it over and over and over again. Whereas I'm thinking if you, crochet or knit, you spend a lot of money on just the materials, the yarn and all that. And it can be bulky to send it. And so that costs money, et cetera, et cetera. So I think card making, is a hobby that is really easy for people to find a way to bless others and to, interact with others based on it. And then the last thing that I want to say, because again, I really want to come off as positive because I do think that card making is a very fun, positive, awesome hobby, is that it's a generally very positive and welcoming community. So you can post things and you can find Facebook groups that are dedicated to card making and sharing techniques. You can you can share on Instagram and use hashtags for card making, that kind of thing. And generally you'll receive really positive comments. I don't see a lot of negativity, especially if you're in a group dedicated to specifically the hobby. And there are I think there's still message boards out there like Split Coast Stampers. So I think that you will find that it will enhance and enrich your life. You will really enjoy it as a hobby, but I just want you to caution you against some of those things that might make it feel more expensive or inaccessible, because I think there are ways around those. So if you found this video helpful, here's another video where you can find more ideas for enjoying your crafty time and supplies. Let me know you like this video with to share it to your crafty community. Subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss the next template or tutorial, and check the video description for those links that I mentioned.